The crackle of static fills the air as a desperate voice breaks through the chaos. This is Earth's last stronghold. We are under siege, but we are not broken. Repeat, we are not broken. The transmission cuts in and out, but the urgency is unmistakable. In the background, the distant roar of explosions and the hum of alien machinery echo like a nightmare come to life. Then, a voice cold, mechanical, and utterly baffled cuts through the noise. They don't sleep. How is this possible? The words hang in the air, heavy with disbelief. The camera pans across a battlefield, a wasteland of shattered alien war machines and smoldering craters. Human soldiers, their faces streaked with dirt and determination, move tirelessly through the wreckage. They don't rest, they don't falter, they fight. This is the beginning of the 100-year siege, a war that would test the limits of endurance, not just for humanity, but for the invaders who thought they had already won. The aliens came with superior technology, overwhelming numbers, and the arrogance of conquerors, but they didn't count on one thing: humans don't sleep. And that single fact would shatter their morale, their resolve, and their empire. Stay with us as we dive into the story of how humanity's relentless spirit turned the tide of an unwinnable war, and how a single, sleepless defiance became the weapon that broke an alien empire. The sky above Earth darkened as the alien fleet emerged from the void, their ships blotting out the stars like a swarm of metallic locusts. They came with a message, broadcast across every frequency, every screen, every corner of the planet. Surrender or face annihilation. Your resistance is futile. The words echoed with the cold certainty of a species that had never known defeat. Their technology was beyond human comprehension, their biology engineered for war. They had crushed countless worlds before, and Earth was meant to be no different, but humanity had a different answer. In the heart of the United Nations, a lone diplomat stepped forward, her voice steady despite the weight of the moment. "You think we'll kneel?" she said, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. "You think your ships and your weapons will break us? We've faced extinction before. We've stared into the abyss and refused to blink. You'll find no surrender here. We'll outlast you." The aliens didn't wait. Their first wave descended, a storm of drop pods and war machines crashing into the surface. Cities burned, skies filled with smoke, and the ground trembled under the weight of their assault, but humanity was ready. Soldiers, civilians, engineers, everyone who could hold a weapon or build a barricade stood their ground. The aliens expected fear, panic, submission. What they found was defiance. Human resistance was unyielding, a wall of flesh and steel that refused to crumble. Every street became a battlefield, every building a fortress. The aliens, for all their power, had never faced an enemy like this. They had never faced an enemy that fought not just with weapons, but with an unbreakable will. And as the first day of the siege turned into night, one thing became clear: this was not going to be a quick victory. This was going to be a war of endurance. And humanity was just getting started. As the smoke cleared and the first wave of alien troops retreated, the humans stood tall, their resolve unshaken. The aliens had come to conquer, but they had underestimated the one thing they couldn't measure: the human spirit, and that spirit was about to change everything. As the war raged on, humanity's survival hinged on more than just courage and determination. Deep beneath the surface, in a hidden facility shielded from the chaos above, a breakthrough was being forged. Here, in the heart of a secret research complex, scientists worked tirelessly to unlock the next evolution of human endurance. The project was codenamed the Vigilance Protocol, and it promised to change the course of the war. A scientist, her face etched with exhaustion but her eyes alight with determination, stood before a skeptical general. Behind her, Rows of monitors displayed data streams and genetic sequences, the culmination of years of research. "This," she said, gesturing to the screens, "is our edge. The Vigilance Protocol rewrites the very limits of human biology. It allows us to function without sleep. No fatigue, no downtime, no weakness. The aliens rely on their technology, but this is something they'll never understand. They can't outlast us if we never stop." The general frowned, his arms crossed. "And the risks, you're talking about altering what makes us human. What if this backfires?" The scientist didn't flinch. "The risks are real, but so is extinction. We've already tested it on volunteers. The results are extraordinary. They're faster, stronger, more focused, and they don't tire, not ever. If we deploy this, we can turn the tide. But we have to act now." The room fell silent, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Finally, the general nodded. "Do it, but understand this: if this fails, it's on you." Within hours, the first test subjects were prepped and deployed to the front lines. These were not ordinary soldiers. They were something new, something the aliens had never encountered. As they moved into position, their movements were precise, their focus unbroken. They didn't rest, didn't falter, didn't stop. On the battlefield, the aliens began to notice something strange. Human forces that should have been exhausted, that should have been retreating, were instead advancing. They fought through the night, through the day, through every hour without pause. The aliens, accustomed to predictable patterns of warfare, found themselves facing an enemy that defied all logic. A human soldier, his eyes sharp and unblinking, radioed back to command. "They're pulling back. They don't know what to do with us. We're not stopping." The Vigilance Protocol was more than a weapon. It was a statement. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was evolving. And as the first light of dawn broke over the battlefield, it became clear that the aliens had underestimated their enemy once again. This was no longer a war of technology or numbers. It was a war of endurance, and humanity was just getting started. As the test subjects pressed forward, their relentless advance sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. The Vigilance Protocol wasn't just a tool, it was a revelation, and it was about to change everything. As the days turned into weeks, the aliens found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. The relentless advance of humanity's sleepless soldiers began to take its toll. Alien commanders, once confident in their superior numbers and technology, now struggled to comprehend the sheer endurance of their foes. Reports flooded in from the front lines, each one more alarming than the last. One alien commander, his voice strained with frustration, contacted his superiors. "Their soldiers fight day and night. Our troops are exhausted. We've tried everything, but they don't stop, they don't rest, they don't even slow down. We can't keep up with this pace." The alien high command was stunned. For the first time in their long history of conquest, they were facing an adversary that refused to yield. Human forces, empowered by the Vigilance Protocol, launched a series of daring nighttime raids, striking with precision and vanishing before the aliens could regroup. These attacks were not just tactical maneuvers, they were psychological warfare. On the ground, the aliens began to falter. Their troops, accustomed to predictable patterns of combat, were unprepared for an enemy that operated without pause. Fatigue set in, morale plummeted, and cracks began to form in their once unshakable resolve. Human soldiers, their movements sharp and unrelenting, pressed the advantage. A young human lieutenant, her voice steady over the comms, rallied her squad. "They're breaking, keep the pressure on, they can't fight if they can't think. We don't stop until they're running." The aliens, desperate to regain control, scrambled to adapt, but every strategy they tried, every countermeasure they deployed, was met with the same unyielding response. Human forces, unburdened by fatigue, outmaneuvered them at every turn. The tide of the war was shifting, and the aliens knew it. As the human advance continued, the aliens' once imposing presence began to crumble. Their troops, pushed to the brink of exhaustion, could no longer match the relentless pace of their sleepless adversaries. The Vigilance Protocol had done more than level the playing field, it had tipped the scales in humanity's favor. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, the aliens were left with a chilling realization: they had underestimated humanity's will to survive. This was no longer a war of conquest, it was a war of endurance, and humanity was winning. With each passing hour, the aliens' resolve weakened, their confidence shattered. The night belonged to humanity now, and the dawn would bring no relief. The war was far from over, but the balance had shifted, and for the first time in 100 years, the aliens began to wonder if they had made a terrible mistake. As the war dragged on, the aliens, desperate to regain their footing, turned to more unconventional tactics. Realizing that humanity's sleepless soldiers were their greatest obstacle, they devised a new strategy: sleep-inducing weapons. These devices, designed to overwhelm the human nervous system and force fatigue, were deployed across the front lines. The aliens hoped this would finally level the playing field, giving their exhausted troops a chance to recover and regroup. But the Vigilance Protocol was more than just a genetic modification, it was a testament to human ingenuity and resilience. When the first wave of sleep-inducing weapons hit, the human soldiers barely flinched. A crackle of laughter echoed over the comms as one soldier quipped, "Nice try, but we're not tired, you'll have to do better than that." The aliens, baffled and frustrated, watched as their latest attempt to gain the upper hand crumbled before their eyes. Human forces, unaffected by the weapons, pressed forward with the same relentless energy. The aliens' morale, already fragile, began to crack under the weight of their failures. On the ground, the situation grew increasingly dire for the invaders. Their troops, already stretched thin, now faced an enemy that seemed immune to their most advanced technology. The sleep-inducing weapons, once seen as a potential game-changer, became a symbol of their desperation. Alien commanders, their voices tinged with disbelief, reported back to their superiors. "The weapons have no effect, they're still coming, they're still fighting, we don't know how to stop them." Human soldiers, emboldened by their resistance to the alien tactics, launched a series of counterattacks. These strikes were not just physical, they were psychological. Each raid, each ambush sent a clear message: humanity would not be subdued. The aliens, their confidence shattered, began to retreat in confusion. As the human advance continued, the cracks in the alien war machine grew wider. Their once unstoppable forces now faltered under the pressure of an enemy that refused to yield. The Vigilance Protocol had not only given humanity an edge, it had exposed the aliens' greatest weakness: their inability to adapt to an adversary that defied their understanding. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, the aliens were left with a chilling realization: their greatest weapons had failed. Humanity's endurance was not just a trait, it was a weapon. And it was one the aliens could not counter. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. The aliens, their morale crumbling, now faced an enemy that fought not just with strength, but with an unbreakable will. And as the night stretched on, the humans pressed their advantage, their sleepless eyes fixed on the horizon. The dawn would bring no relief for the invaders. The night belonged to humanity now, and the aliens were beginning to understand the cost of underestimating their foes. As the war entered its next critical phase, the battlefield shifted to the ruins of New York City, a once thriving metropolis now reduced to a shattered landscape of crumbling skyscrapers and broken streets. Here, amid the remnants of human civilization, a pivotal battle would unfold, one that would test the limits of both sides and cement humanity's dominance in the war. The aliens, desperate to regain control, had fortified their positions within the city, using its labyrinthine ruins to their advantage, but what they didn't account for was the relentless energy of humanity's sleepless soldiers. Under the command of a young lieutenant named Elena Reyes, human forces prepared to strike. Elena, her voice steady and commanding, addressed her troops as they gathered in the shadow of a fallen skyscraper. "They sleep, we don't. This is our city now," she declared, her words cutting through the tension like a blade. "We've endured their attacks, their tricks, their desperation. But tonight, we take back what's ours. Tonight, we show them what it means to face humanity." The soldiers, their faces illuminated by the faint glow of their equipment, nodded in silent agreement. They had fought for decades, their bodies and minds honed by the Vigilance Protocol. Sleep was no longer a necessity, it was a relic of the past, and as they moved through the ruins, their movements precise and deliberate, the aliens began to realize the gravity of their mistake. Human forces, unburdened by fatigue, executed a series of coordinated strikes that left the invaders reeling. They moved through the city like shadows, striking at key positions and vanishing before the aliens could mount a counterattack. The aliens, their troops exhausted and disoriented, struggled to keep up with the pace of the assault. Elena, leading from the front, directed her troops with a calm determination. "Flank them here," she ordered, pointing to a map projected on her wrist display. "Cut off their retreat, they won't see us coming." The battle raged through the night, the sound of gunfire and explosions echoing through the empty streets. But as the hours passed, it became clear that the tide had turned. Human forces, their energy unyielding, pushed the aliens back block by block. The invaders, their morale crumbling under the relentless pressure, began to falter. By dawn, the city was quiet once more. The aliens, their forces decimated, had been driven from the ruins of New York. Human soldiers stood atop the rubble, their sleepless eyes scanning the horizon. Elena, her face streaked with dirt and sweat, allowed herself a rare smile. "We did it," she said, her voice carrying the weight of a hard-fought victory. "This is our city now, and we're not giving it back." The battle for New York was more than just a military victory. It was a symbol of humanity's unbreakable spirit. The aliens, their confidence shattered, now faced an enemy that refused to yield, no matter the cost. And as the sun rose over the ruins, casting its light on the battlefield, the humans stood tall, their sleepless endurance a beacon of hope in a war that had tested the limits of both sides. With New York secured, the war entered a new chapter. The aliens, their forces weakened and their morale in tatters, now faced an enemy that fought not just with strength, but with an unrelenting will. And as the humans prepared for their next move, the aliens were left with a chilling realization. Their greatest weapons had failed, and their greatest mistake had been underestimating humanity. The night belonged to humanity now, and the dawn brought no relief for the invaders. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, the aliens were left to wonder, how do you defeat an enemy that never sleeps? As the war dragged on, the aliens faced a grim reality. Their once unstoppable forces were crumbling under the weight of humanity's relentless endurance. Desperate to regain their edge, they turned to a dangerous and untested solution, experimenting on their own soldiers in a bid to replicate the Vigilance Protocol. In the shadowy depths of their research facilities, alien scientists worked tirelessly, driven by a mix of fear and determination. They dissected captured human technology, analyzed genetic samples, and subjected their own troops to grueling trials. The goal was clear: to create a new breed of soldier, one that could match humanity's sleepless stamina, but the cost of such ambition would prove catastrophic. An alien scientist, his voice trembling with exhaustion and despair, addressed his superiors in a dimly lit chamber. "We cannot become them," he confessed, his words heavy with regret. "The experiments, they're tearing us apart. Our soldiers are breaking under the strain. Their minds, their bodies, they're not built for this." The results of the experiments were nothing short of disastrous. Alien soldiers, once disciplined and formidable, now exhibited erratic behavior. Some collapsed under the mental strain, their minds fractured by the unnatural demands placed upon them. Others turned on their own comrades, driven to madness by the relentless pressure. The alien forces, once a unified and fearsome army, were now a shadow of their former selves. Human intelligence operatives, monitoring the situation from afar, reported the chaos with grim satisfaction. "They're trying to play God," one operative remarked, "and it's backfiring spectacularly. Their troops are falling apart faster than they can replace them." The aliens' attempts to mimic human endurance had not only failed, they had backfired in the most devastating way. Their forces, already stretched thin by decades of war, now faced internal collapse. Morale plummeted as soldiers began to question the very purpose of the war. "Why are we fighting an enemy we cannot defeat?" one alien soldier whispered to another, his voice filled with despair. As the instability spread, the alien command structure began to fracture. Orders were ignored, alliances crumbled, and entire units deserted. The once proud alien war machine, built on the promise of conquest, was now unraveling from within. For humanity, the aliens' desperation was a sign of their growing weakness. "They're trying to fight fire with fire," Elena Reyes observed, her voice calm but resolute. "But they don't understand this isn't just about endurance, it's about will, and they'll never have what we have." The aliens' failed experiments marked a turning point in the war. Their forces, now plagued by instability and dissent, were no match for humanity's unyielding resolve, and as the humans prepared for their next move, the aliens were left to grapple with a chilling truth: their greatest mistake had been trying to become something they could never be. The war was far from over, but the balance of power had shifted. Humanity, with its sleepless endurance and unbreakable spirit, had proven itself to be more than just a formidable enemy, it was an unstoppable force. And as the aliens struggled to hold their crumbling forces together, they were forced to confront a question that would haunt them to the end: how do you defeat an enemy that refuses to break? With their experiments in ruins and their forces in disarray, the aliens now faced a new and terrifying reality. The war was no longer just a battle for survival, it was a battle for their very identity. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, the aliens were left to wonder, had they already lost? As the aliens reeled from the fallout of their failed experiments, humanity seized the moment to strike. With their enemies weakened and disorganized, the time had come to shift from defense to offense. The plan was bold, audacious, and perfectly suited to humanity's sleepless advantage: a full-scale counteroffensive aimed at crippling the alien war machine by cutting off its lifelines. Deep within the human command centers, strategists pored over maps and intelligence reports, identifying key alien supply routes and logistical hubs. "If we hit them here," one officer pointed out, tracing a line across the holographic display, "we can starve their front lines of reinforcements, fuel, and ammunition. Without their supply lines, they'll collapse." The operation was led by a grizzled veteran, a man who had seen the worst of the war and emerged hardened by its trials. His voice, rough and commanding,
echoed through the ranks as he rallied his troops. "Listen up," he barked, his eyes scanning the faces of the soldiers before him. "We're not just fighting for survival anymore, we're taking the fight to them. Keep moving, they can't stop us if we never stop." Under the cover of darkness, human forces launched their assault. Sleek, silent drones scouted ahead, pinpointing alien defenses and relaying real-time data to the advancing troops. Sleepless and relentless, the human soldiers moved with precision, striking supply depots, fuel reserves, and communication hubs with surgical efficiency. The aliens, already struggling to maintain order, were caught completely off guard. Their supply lines, once the backbone of their war effort, were now burning wreckage. Convoys were ambushed, warehouses reduced to rubble, and key infrastructure left in ruins. The aliens' once formidable war machine began to sputter and stall, its gears grinding to a halt under the weight of humanity's relentless assault. In the chaos, alien commanders scrambled to respond, but their efforts were hampered by the instability within their own ranks. Orders were delayed, reinforcements failed to arrive, and the once coordinated alien forces were reduced to scattered, disorganized pockets of resistance. For the human soldiers, the success of the counteroffensive was a testament to their endurance and determination. "They thought they could outlast us," one soldier remarked, his voice tinged with grim satisfaction. "But they didn't realize we're not just surviving, we're thriving." As the operation unfolded, the grizzled veteran remained at the forefront, his presence a constant reminder of humanity's unyielding resolve. "This is what they don't understand," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him. "It's not just about staying awake, it's about staying focused, staying determined. And that's something they'll never have." The counteroffensive marked a decisive turning point in the war. With their supply lines severed and their forces in disarray, the aliens were left reeling. Humanity, once on the defensive, had now taken the initiative, driving the invaders back and reclaiming lost ground. As the dust settled and the human forces regrouped, the grizzled veteran stood atop a ruined alien outpost, gazing out at the horizon. "This isn't the end," he said, his voice carrying the weight of experience. "But it's the beginning of the end, and we're not stopping until we've finished this." With their enemies on the back foot and their own momentum building, humanity prepared for the next phase of the war. The aliens, once the aggressors, now found themselves fighting not for conquest, but for survival. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, one truth became clear: humanity's sleepless endurance wasn't just a weapon, it was a force of nature, unstoppable and unrelenting. The stage was set for the final act of the war, and humanity was ready to deliver the decisive blow. As the war stretched into its 50th year, the aliens, battered and desperate, made a move that no one had anticipated. For decades, they had relied on their superior technology and biological advantages, but now, faced with humanity's unrelenting endurance, they sought a different path: negotiation. A transmission crackled through the human command channels, carrying the voice of an alien envoy. Their tone, once arrogant and commanding, now carried a note of weariness. "We propose an end to this conflict," the envoy declared. "In exchange for your Vigilance Protocol, we offer peace. Lay down your weapons, and we will withdraw from your world." The message rippled through the human ranks, sparking debates and discussions. Some saw it as an opportunity to end the bloodshed, while others viewed it as a trap, a final, desperate ploy by an enemy on the brink of collapse. The decision fell to a human leader, a figure whose resolve had become legendary among the sleepless warriors. Standing before a council of generals and advisors, the leader's voice was calm but unyielding. "They came to conquer," they said, their words cutting through the tension in the room. not to bargain, not to negotiate. They thought they could break us, and when they couldn't, they turned to tricks. But we've endured too much, sacrificed too much to fall for this now. The room fell silent as the leader's words sank in. We'll see this through to the end, they continued, their tone firm. Not because we seek vengeance, but because we know what's at stake. If we give them the Vigilance Protocol, they'll only use it to strengthen themselves. And then they'll come back, stronger, more determined. We can't let that happen. The decision was clear. Humanity would not surrender its greatest advantage, not after 50 years of struggle. The aliens' offer was rejected. Their envoy sent back with a simple message: we fight not for conquest, but for survival, and we will not stop until we are free. The rejection sent shockwaves through the alien ranks. For the first time, they faced the reality that their enemy could not be bought, bribed, or broken. Humanity's refusal to negotiate was a declaration of their unyielding spirit, a reminder that their endurance was not just physical, but moral. As the war entered its 6th decade, the aliens found themselves facing an enemy unlike any they had ever encountered. Humanity's sleepless warriors, driven by a resolve that no amount of time or hardship could erode, pressed forward. The aliens, once the aggressors, now found themselves fighting not for conquest, but for survival. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, one truth became undeniable: humanity's endurance was not just a weapon, it was a force of nature, unstoppable and unrelenting. The war was far from over, but the tide had turned, and humanity, sleepless and steadfast, was ready to see it through to the end. As the war dragged on, a surprising shift began to ripple through the alien ranks. The relentless pressure of humanity's sleepless endurance had not only worn down their forces, but also fractured their unity. Among the alien soldiers, whispers of doubt grew louder, and cracks in their resolve began to show. It was in this atmosphere of desperation and disillusionment that a rogue faction emerged, breaking away from their command structure in a bold act of defiance. Their leader, a once loyal commander who had witnessed the horrors of the war firsthand, stepped forward to address their human counterparts. "We have seen your resilience," the alien leader declared, their voice carrying a mix of awe and determination. "We have seen how you endure, how you fight not for conquest, but for survival, and we have realized that we are not so different. We, too, fight to survive, not to conquer. Join us, and together we can end this war." The offer was met with skepticism at first. After decades of conflict, trust was in short supply, but as the rogue faction proved their sincerity through actions sabotaging alien supply lines, sharing critical intelligence, and fighting alongside human forces, the tide began to turn. For the first time, humanity found itself with allies who understood the stakes, who had seen the cost of the war and chosen to stand against it. The alliance was a turning point. With the rogue faction's knowledge of alien tactics and technology, human forces gained a strategic edge. Joint operations targeted key alien strongholds, crippling their ability to wage war. The aliens, already struggling to match humanity's endurance, now faced a new threat, their own kind, fighting not for conquest, but for survival. As the war entered a new phase, the rogue faction's leader stood before a gathering of human and alien soldiers, their words echoing across the battlefield. "We fight not for empires, not for glory," they said, their voice steady and resolute. "We fight for a future where our children can live without fear. And together, we will see that future come to pass." The alliance marked a seismic shift in the war's trajectory. No longer was humanity fighting alone against an overwhelming foe. Now they fought alongside those who had once been their enemies, united by a shared vision of survival and freedom. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, one truth became clear: the tide had turned, and the war would never be the same. With this newfound alliance, humanity's sleepless warriors pressed forward, their resolve stronger than ever. The aliens, once the aggressors, now found themselves outmaneuvered and outmatched. And as the war entered its next chapter, the galaxy watched in awe, witnessing the birth of a new era, one forged not in conquest, but in the unyielding spirit of survival. As the war reached its climax, the aliens, desperate to regain the upper hand, unveiled their ultimate weapon, a planet-wide electromagnetic pulse designed to cripple human technology. This was their last gamble, a final attempt to break humanity's relentless advance. The pulse swept across Earth, a silent wave of destruction meant to render all advanced systems useless. For a moment, the battlefield fell eerily quiet, as if the world itself held its breath. But then, from the heart of the human command center, a voice broke the silence. A human engineer, her face lit by the glow of analog monitors, grinned as she spoke into the comms. "We've been ready for this," she said, her tone brimming with confidence. "Our systems are analog now, your pulse can't touch us." The aliens, expecting chaos and collapse, were met instead with unyielding resistance. Human forces, operating on hardened, low-tech systems, continued their advance without missing a beat. The EMP, a weapon designed to end the war in a single stroke, had failed utterly. This failure struck a devastating blow to alien morale. Their commanders, already reeling from the alliance between humanity and the rogue faction, now faced the grim reality that even their most powerful weapon was useless. The pulse had been their last hope, and its failure left them with no options left. As reports of the EMP's ineffectiveness spread through the alien ranks, their resolve began to crumble. Soldiers who had once fought with unwavering loyalty now questioned their purpose. "If even this cannot stop them," one alien officer whispered to another, "then what can?" For humanity, the failed EMP attack was more than just a victory. It was a symbol of their ingenuity and resilience. They had anticipated the aliens' every move, adapting and preparing for the worst. And now, as the alien forces faltered, human troops pressed forward with renewed determination. The tide of the war had shifted irrevocably. The aliens, once the aggressors, now found themselves on the defensive, their morale shattered and their strategies in disarray. And as the stars burned cold and distant above the battlefield, one truth became undeniable. Humanity's sleepless endurance had not only outlasted the invaders, but had also outsmarted them at every turn. With their final weapon rendered useless, the aliens faced a grim future. The war, once a struggle for survival, had become a fight for their very existence. And as the galaxy watched, humanity's sleepless warriors stood tall, ready to deliver the final blow. With the aliens reeling from their failed EMP attack, humanity seized the moment to turn the tide of the war completely. Intelligence gathered from the rogue alien faction revealed the location of the invaders' homeworld, a secret they had guarded fiercely. For the first time in the century-long conflict, humanity had the opportunity to strike at the heart of the alien empire. Aboard the flagship of the human fleet, Commander Elena Reyes stood before her officers, her voice steady but filled with determination. "They thought we'd break," she declared, her words echoing through the command center. "They thought we'd crumble under their technology, their numbers, their arrogance, but they were wrong. Now we bring the fight to them." The room erupted in cheers, a chorus of voices united by a single purpose. For too long, humanity had been on the defensive, fighting to survive against an enemy that seemed unstoppable. But now, the tables had turned. The aliens had underestimated humanity's resilience, and that mistake would cost them everything. As the fleet prepared for the long journey to the alien homeworld, engineers worked tirelessly to ensure every ship was battle-ready. The lessons of the war had been hard-earned, and humanity had adapted in ways the aliens could never have imagined. Low-tech, analog systems were now the backbone of their war machine, immune to the aliens' technological tricks. The journey through the stars was tense, the weight of what lay ahead pressing on every soldier's mind. But there was no fear, only resolve. Humanity had endured 100 years of war, sleepless and unyielding, and now they were taking the fight to the enemy's doorstep. When the fleet finally emerged from hyperspace, the alien homeworld came into view, a sprawling, glittering planet surrounded by defensive installations. The aliens, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of the human fleet, scrambled to mount a defense, but it was too late. Commander Reyes gave the order, her voice cutting through the silence of space. "All ships engage, let's show them what it means to face humanity." The battle that followed was fierce, a clash of wills and firepower that lit up the void. Human ships, smaller and more agile than their alien counterparts, weaved through the chaos, striking with precision. The aliens, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. As the human fleet pressed the attack, the aliens' resolve began to waver. For the first time in their history, they were the ones under siege, their homeworld threatened by an enemy they had once dismissed as weak. The sight of human ships breaking through their defenses sent shockwaves through their ranks. On the ground, human troops landed in waves, their sleepless endurance giving them the edge in the brutal close-quarters combat that followed. The aliens, exhausted and demoralized, could not match the relentless pace of the human advance. The assault on the alien homeworld was more than just a military victory, it was a statement. Humanity had not only survived the aliens' onslaught, but had risen to challenge them on their own turf. The war, once a desperate struggle for survival, had become a fight for justice, for the future of the galaxy. And as the human fleet tightened its grip on the alien capital, one truth became clear: the invaders had awakened a force they could not contain. Humanity's sleepless warriors had brought the fight to their doorstep, and there would be no retreat. As the human fleet tightened its grip on the alien capital, the invaders found themselves in a position they had never imagined, utterly outmatched and on the brink of collapse. The relentless advance of humanity's sleepless warriors had shattered their defenses, both physical and psychological. Within the alien ranks, whispers of doubt began to spread like wildfire. In the shadow of a crumbling command center, an alien soldier turned to his comrade, his voice trembling with exhaustion and fear. "We cannot win," he murmured, his words barely audible over the distant roar of battle. "They are relentless, they do not tire, they do not falter. How can we fight an enemy that never stops?" The sentiment echoed through the alien forces, a growing realization that their once unstoppable empire was unraveling. The command structure, once a well-oiled machine of conquest, began to fracture under the strain. Orders were delayed, strategies fell apart, and coordination between units dissolved into chaos. The aliens, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with superior numbers and technology, now faced an adversary that defied every expectation. Humanity's sleepless endurance had become their greatest weapon. While the alien troops grew weary, their movements sluggish and their morale crumbling, human soldiers pressed forward with unyielding determination. The aliens' attempts to regroup were met with swift, decisive strikes, leaving no room for recovery. As the human forces advanced deeper into the alien capital, the invaders' once imposing presence began to disintegrate. Alien commanders, desperate to maintain control, issued frantic orders that only added to the confusion. Soldiers, once fiercely loyal, now questioned the wisdom of their leaders. The cracks in their unity widened, and the once mighty alien empire began to splinter. The collapse of the alien command structure was not just a military defeat, it was a psychological one. For the first time in their history, the invaders faced an enemy they could not intimidate, outlast, or overpower. Humanity's relentless spirit had broken their will, and the tide of the war had shifted irreversibly. As the human fleet closed in on the heart of the alien capital, the invaders' resistance grew weaker by the hour. The whispers of defeat among their ranks became a deafening roar, and the once proud alien empire stood on the edge of total collapse. But for humanity, this was more than just a victory. It was a testament to their unbreakable spirit. The aliens had come to conquer, but they had awakened a force they could not contain. And as the final hours of the siege unfolded, one truth became undeniable. Humanity's sleepless warriors had not only survived the aliens' onslaught, they had broken them. With the alien forces in disarray, the stage was set for the final act of the century-long war. The invaders, once the hunters, had become the hunted. And humanity, relentless and unyielding, prepared to deliver the final blow. As the final hours of the siege unfolded, humanity's sleepless warriors surged into the heart of the alien capital, their advance unrelenting and their resolve unshaken. The once impenetrable defenses of the alien empire now lay in ruins, their towering structures reduced to rubble and their streets eerily silent. What little resistance remained was scattered and disorganized, a far cry from the disciplined force that had once threatened Earth. A human soldier, his face streaked with dirt and his eyes sharp with determination, surveyed the scene before him. The alien troops, once fierce and unyielding, now stood with their weapons lowered, their expressions hollow with defeat. "They've given up," he remarked to his comrades, his voice steady but tinged with triumph. "They can't keep up with us, not anymore." The words echoed through the ranks, a quiet acknowledgement of the monumental shift that had taken place. The aliens, who had once believed themselves invincible, now faced the undeniable reality of their downfall. Their soldiers, exhausted and demoralized, began to lay down their arms in droves. The sight of entire battalions surrendering en masse was a stark contrast to the arrogance they had displayed a century earlier. Humanity's sleepless endurance had not only outlasted the invaders, it had broken them. The aliens, accustomed to overwhelming their enemies with sheer force, had never encountered an adversary like this. Their attempts to adapt, to match humanity's relentless pace, had only deepened their despair. Now, as their capital fell, they had no choice but to admit defeat. The streets of the alien city, once bustling with the activity of a thriving empire, now bore the scars of a war they could not win. Alien civilians, their faces etched with fear and confusion, watched as human soldiers moved through the ruins with purpose and precision. The invaders, who had come to conquer, now found themselves at the mercy of those they had sought to destroy. For humanity, this moment was more than a victory, it was a vindication. The sleepless warriors who had fought for a century, who had endured unimaginable hardships and sacrifices, now stood triumphant. The aliens, who had once believed they could break humanity's spirit, had instead been broken by it. As the last of the alien forces surrendered, the human soldiers took stock of their surroundings. The war was not yet over, but the tide had turned irrevocably. The aliens, once the hunters, had become the hunted, and humanity, relentless and unyielding, had proven that even against impossible odds, they would never surrender. With the alien capital secured, the final chapter of the war was about to be written, but for now, in the quiet aftermath of their victory, humanity's sleepless warriors allowed themselves a moment of reflection. They had not only survived the aliens' onslaught, they had triumphed over it, and as they stood amidst the ruins of their enemy's empire, one truth remained clear: humanity's endurance had not just won the war, it had redefined what it meant to be unbreakable. As the dust settled over the ruins of the alien capital, the true cost of the century-long war began to emerge. The streets, once filled with the clamor of battle, now echoed with the quiet hum of reconstruction. Humanity's sleepless warriors, though victorious, bore the scars of a conflict that had tested their limits in every way imaginable. Among them, a human medic moved through the makeshift infirmaries, tending to the wounded with hands that had seen too much but refused to falter. "We paid a price," she murmured, her voice heavy with the weight of memory as she bandaged a soldier's arm, "but we proved we're unbreakable." Her words carried the quiet pride of someone who had witnessed the worst and still found the strength to endure. Around her, the medics worked tirelessly, their sleepless stamina now turned to healing rather than fighting. The war had taken its toll, but it had also revealed the depth of humanity's resilience. Across the galaxy, the aftermath of the conflict unfolded in stark contrasts. The alien empire, once a sprawling dominion, now lay fractured and humbled. Their cities, once symbols of their dominance, were now monuments to their defeat. Alien civilians, their lives upended by the war, wandered the ruins with a mixture of fear and awe. They had been told humanity was weak, that their need for sleep made them vulnerable. Now they saw the truth. Humanity's endurance had not just outlasted their empire, it had reshaped the galaxy. For humanity, the victory came at a steep cost. Entire generations had been lost, their lives given in the relentless struggle to survive. Planets lay in ruins, their populations displaced, and their resources depleted. Yet amidst the devastation, there was hope. The sleepless warriors who had fought for so long now turned their efforts to rebuilding, their determination undiminished. They had proven that even in the face of annihilation, humanity could not be broken. The aliens, too, faced the consequences of their hubris. Their once mighty fleets were reduced to scattered remnants, their soldiers demoralized and their leaders disgraced. The war had not just shattered their empire, it had shattered their belief in their own invincibility. For many, the realization was a bitter pill to swallow. Yet among the ruins, there were signs of change. Some alien factions, inspired by humanity's resilience, began to question the path that had led them to war. As the galaxy began to rebuild, the lessons of the conflict were not lost on either side. Humanity's sleepless endurance had not just secured their survival, it had redefined the balance of power. The aliens, once the aggressors, now faced the daunting task of rebuilding their society from the ground up, and humanity, though scarred, stood as a testament to the unyielding spirit that had carried them through the darkest of times. The medic paused, her gaze drifting to the horizon where the first rays of a new dawn broke through the clouds. The war was over, but the work of healing had only just begun. And as she turned back to her patients, her resolve remained unshaken. They had paid a price, yes, but they had also proven that no matter the cost, humanity would endure. With the galaxy slowly piecing itself back together, the next chapter of this story would be one of recovery and renewal. But for now, in the quiet moments of reflection, the sleepless warriors allowed themselves to remember what they had fought for and what they had gained. The war had changed them, but it had also shown them the strength they never knew they had. And as they looked to the future, one truth remained clear: humanity's endurance was not just a weapon, it was a legacy. As the galaxy began to heal, the Vigilance Protocol emerged as more than just a tool of war, it became a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit. Across the stars, stories of the sleepless warriors spread, their legend growing with each retelling. A historian, penning the first accounts of the century-long conflict, captured it best: "They thought sleep was a weakness, we made it our strength." These words echoed through the halls of human colonies, a reminder of the price paid and the resilience forged in the fires of war. The protocol, once a desperate measure to survive, now stood as a testament to humanity's ingenuity and determination. It was no longer just a genetic modification, it was a beacon of hope, a symbol of what could be achieved when faced with impossible odds. On distant planets, children learned of the sleepless soldiers who had fought to protect their future, their tales inspiring a new generation to dream of a galaxy where humanity's endurance was not just a weapon, but a legacy. Among the alien survivors, the protocol became a subject of both awe and fear. They had underestimated humanity's ability to adapt, to turn what they saw as a flaw into an advantage. Now, as they rebuilt their shattered societies, they could not help but marvel at the species that had defied their expectations. Some even began to study the protocol, not as a weapon, but as a lesson in resilience. For humanity, the Vigilance Protocol was more than a scientific achievement. It was a reminder of their capacity to endure. It symbolized the sacrifices made, the lives lost, and the unbreakable will that had carried them through the darkest of times. As the historians' words spread, they became a rallying cry for a species that had proven, once and for all, that they would not be broken. And so, as the stars burned brightly above, the legend of humanity's sleepless warriors continued to grow. Their story was no longer just one of survival, it was a testament to the strength that lies within, a strength that had reshaped the galaxy and left an indelible mark on the cosmos. The Vigilance Protocol was not just a tool of war, it was a symbol of humanity's unyielding spirit, a reminder that even in the face of annihilation, they would endure. With the galaxy watching, humanity's legend spread, a story of resilience that would echo through the ages. And as the historians' words were etched into history, they carried a simple truth: humanity's endurance was not just a weapon, it was their greatest strength. As the stars continued to shine, the next chapter of humanity's journey would be one of rebuilding and renewal, but the legacy of the Vigilance Protocol would remain, a beacon of hope for all who dared to dream of a brighter future. As the dust of war settled and the galaxy began to heal, the alien survivors, once humanity's fiercest adversaries, found themselves standing shoulder to shoulder with those they had once sought to conquer. The fragile peace that now held the stars together was not built on dominance, but on mutual respect, a respect forged in the fires of a century-long conflict. Among these survivors, an alien elder stepped forward, their voice carrying the weight of hard-earned wisdom. "We underestimated you," they admitted, their tone a mix of awe and regret. "Your endurance broke us. We thought we were unstoppable, but you showed us the strength of a species that refuses to yield." This admission was more than just words, it was a turning point. The aliens, who had once viewed humanity as inferior, now saw them as equals, their resilience a testament to the power of adaptation and determination. The elders' confession echoed through the halls of their rebuilt cities, a humbling reminder of the cost of arrogance and the value of humility. For the first time, the aliens began to truly understand the depth of humanity's spirit, a spirit that had not only survived but thrived in the face of annihilation. As the two species worked together to rebuild what had been lost, the alien survivors began to share their own stories. They spoke of the fear that had gripped them as they watched humanity's sleepless warriors push forward, unrelenting and unstoppable. They recounted the moment they realized that their superior technology and numbers meant nothing against a foe that refused to tire, refused to falter. "You were not just fighting for survival," one alien soldier confessed. "You were fighting for something greater, something we could not comprehend until it was too late." This newfound understanding became the foundation of a fragile but growing alliance. The aliens, once driven by conquest, now sought to learn from humanity's example. They studied the Vigilance Protocol not as a weapon, but as a lesson in resilience, a blueprint for survival in a harsh and unforgiving universe. Together, the two species began to forge a new path, one built on cooperation rather than conflict, on hope rather than fear. Yet, even as peace took hold, the scars of war remained. The alien elders' words lingered in the air, a reminder of the price paid by both sides. "We underestimated you," they had said, and in those words lay a warning to all who might one day seek to challenge humanity's resolve. For in the end, it was not technology or numbers that had won the war, but the unyielding spirit of a species that refused to be broken. As the stars above burned brightly, the galaxy watched as humanity and their former enemies took their first steps toward a shared future. The road ahead would not be easy, but for the first time in a century, there was hope, and in that hope lay the promise of a galaxy where endurance was not just a weapon, but a bridge to understanding. The alien elders' words would echo through the ages, a testament to the power of resilience and the strength of a species that had proven, once and for all, that they would endure. As the galaxy began to heal, humanity stepped forward to shape a new era, one defined not by conquest but by the hard-earned wisdom of survival. The scars of the century-long siege were still fresh, but they served as a reminder of what had been lost and what could still be gained. Standing before a gathering of species from across the stars, a human leader raised their voice, their words carrying the weight of 100 years of struggle. "We fought not to conquer, but to survive," they declared, their tone firm yet filled with quiet resolve. "Let this be a lesson to all, that endurance, unity, and the refusal to yield can overcome even the greatest of odds." This declaration marked the birth of a new galactic order, one built on the principles of cooperation and mutual respect. Humanity, once seen as a fragile species clinging to survival, had become a beacon of resilience, their story inspiring countless others across the stars. The lessons of the siege were etched into the fabric of this new order, a constant reminder that strength lay not in domination, but in the ability to adapt, endure, and rise above adversity. The galaxy watched in awe as humanity took its place at the forefront of this new alliance. The Vigilance Protocol, once a weapon of war, became a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of innovation and determination. Alien species who had once viewed humanity with suspicion now looked to them as leaders, their example proving that even the smallest of sparks could ignite a flame capable of lighting the darkest corners of the universe. Yet, this new order was not without its challenges. Old rivalries and lingering mistrust threatened to undermine the fragile peace, but humanity's leaders remained steadfast. They understood that the true test of their endurance was not in winning the war, but in building a lasting peace. "We have faced the abyss and emerged stronger," the human leader continued, their voice steady. "Let us now face the future together, not as conquerors, but as partners in shaping a galaxy where all can thrive." As the stars above burned brightly, the galaxy began to take its first steps toward a shared destiny. The lessons of the siege were not forgotten, but rather woven into the very fabric of this new era. Humanity's resilience had not only broken the alien invaders, it had forged a path toward a brighter future, one where endurance was not just a weapon, but a bridge to understanding. And as the galaxy watched, it became clear that the true victory lay not in the battles won, but in the peace that followed. As the galaxy began to settle into its newfound peace, the final chapter of humanity's story unfolded in a moment of quiet reflection. High above the ruins of what was once an alien stronghold, a lone human soldier stood, their silhouette stark against the backdrop of a star-filled sky. The fortress beneath their feet, now a crumbling monument to a war that had reshaped the galaxy, served as a reminder of the cost of victory. The soldiers' gaze lingered on the stars, their expression a mix of weariness and pride. In a voice barely above a whisper, they spoke the words that had become humanity's rallying cry. "We don't sleep, we endure." The camera slowly panned outward, revealing the vast expanse of the galaxy, now free from the shadow of tyranny. The stars seemed to burn brighter, their light a testament to the resilience of those who had fought to protect them. This was not just a victory for humanity, but for every species that had stood against oppression. The soldiers' words echoed across the ruins, a quiet declaration of the unyielding spirit that had carried them through a century of struggle. As the view widened, the scars of war were still visible, shattered ships drifting in the void, planets slowly healing from the devastation, but they were no longer symbols of despair. Instead, they stood as proof of what could be overcome. The galaxy, once divided by fear and conquest, now moved forward as one, united by the lessons of endurance and the promise of a brighter future. The soldier remained still, their figure small against the vastness of space, yet their presence was a powerful reminder of humanity's role in this new era. They had not just survived the siege, they had redefined what it meant to endure, and as the camera faded to black, the words lingered in the silence, a final tribute to the unbreakable will of those who had refused to yield. "We don't sleep, we endure." As the final moments of humanity's story settle into the annals of history, we are left to reflect on the monumental journey that defined not just a species, but an entire galaxy. The 100-year siege was more than a war. It was a testament to the unyielding spirit of humanity, a force that refused to be broken even in the face of overwhelming odds. The alien invaders, with their superior technology and biological advantages, had come to conquer, to dominate, to erase, but they underestimated the one thing they could never replicate, the relentless endurance of a species that simply would not sleep. The narrator's voice, steady and resonant, carries the weight of this reflection. They came to break us, it begins, but in the end, it was their morale that shattered. They could not comprehend a foe that fought without rest, that endured without pause, that refused to yield even when the odds seemed insurmountable. Humanity's defiance was not just a strategy, it was a declaration that we would not be defined by our limitations, but by our ability to rise above them. The screen begins to fade, the stars dimming as the final words echo. "Because humans don't sleep," the narrator concludes, "we endure, and in enduring we triumphed." The galaxy, once a battlefield, now stands as a symbol of unity and resilience. The scars of war remain, but they are no longer wounds. They are reminders of what was overcome, of the price paid for freedom, and of the unbreakable will that made it possible. As the screen fades to black, the audience is left with a profound sense of awe. Humanity's triumph was not just a victory over an enemy, it was a victory over despair, over exhaustion, over the very idea that limits could define us. And as the stars disappear into the darkness, one truth remains, clear and unshakable. Humanity's endurance is not just a trait, it is a legacy that will echo across the stars for generations to come.